Ready, go! Okay, let's dance!
Iceborne essentially doubles the amount of monsters that are in the game, including some household names that I remember being talked about back when World was new. And I gotta say, some of these I hadn't even heard about before, nor was I expecting them to be so difficult or different to the other monsters, I guess. At least when compared to the other monsters that we fought last video, which fight pretty similarly to the others, or simply being variations of them. So let's get right into it. So, after finishing our fight with the Brachydios, which admittedly should have been easier, but you know, we spotted an elder dragon, Velkhana, making its way towards the new world. So naturally, we give chase, and as we're patrolling the ancient forest, we come across tracks that I had never seen before. But when we go to inspect them... Excuse me, what? No, play that back. That doesn't sound right. Anyways, before we get to scrap, the wild Rathalos comes in to help us. Taking that opportunity, we regroup on base, and then we head out to hunt the Nargacuga, which is... where is it? Yeah, it doesn't help that it's raining and it's nighttime. I can barely see it. Anyways, we begin fighting. Now, he looks similar to the Brachydios, so I had a feeling that he would fight somewhat similarly. Which in some ways I'm right, and in some others, no. While his damage isn't as ludicrous, he still deals a ton of it, and is even faster somehow. Especially what I'm calling his fast spin attack, which he can just do whenever he wants. It is extremely hard to react to, let alone dodge or block. And speaking of its tail, it's covered in spikes, so most of his attacks coming from his tail deal the most amount of damage. However, the game has an interesting way to handle this, and that's the fact that the tail can actually get stuck on the ground, giving you a few openings to attack. Just be careful, because the monster can actually feint those and attack you when you try to be greedy and go for too many hits, or approach it in general. Or even if you don't, because he can launch his tail spikes as daggers, which will inflict bleed on you, which if you didn't bring the item that cures it, makes it so that you need to crouch around, making you an easier target for it. Now, as you can tell, I fixed the armor problem that I was having last time, now even having a massive extra chunk of it. And even then, most of my time my health bar was close to empty. Yeah, these monsters are no joke, especially finding them blind without any idea on how they actually work. I know if you've played other Monster Hunter games, you would likely recognize them and how they fight, but this is my first time seeing all the monsters here. And I think this one is actually really fun. Nothing too extraordinary, but his insane speed makes it so that you need to always be doing something. And it doesn't take too long before we capture him. When it comes to debuffs and monsters with ranged attacks, I still think Tobikadachi is a bit harder. You can see my experiences with him in the last video if you would like. The link is in the description. And while you're down there, feel free to drop a like if you're enjoying the video, or subscribing if you enjoy this style of content. The support you guys show really means a lot to me. So let's grow our little community, okay? Thanks! Now, on to the next hunt. This time it takes us to the Wildspire Wastes, as we look for some more Velkhana tracks. But instead we find...
Okay, let's dance!
You know, I'm glad I brought my lightning build for this. Now, Glavenus is actually a fairly similar monster to some others we fought before. However, this is the first one that has a body part that is genuinely just a straight up weapon. While he has some breath and pounce attacks, most of his damage is going to come from his tail. Adding on to that, his reach is surprisingly deceptive. However, this does come with one massive advantage, and that is that its attacks are extremely slow. Relatively, that is. So out of all the monsters I fought in this gauntlet, this was the easiest one to block and counter. But this monster does have a rather mean and rage state, where he will heat up his tail, essentially extending his range and adding this nasty fire effect to all his attacks. And while I'm not really sure, I think he deals extra damage in this form, so when he enters this state, play a lot more carefully. And remember to use your surroundings. His tail can get stuck in some areas, and he will very easily trigger things like landslides where he will get caught in the damage. And because these are invading monsters, they will engage in fights with other heavy hitters, basically giving you a nice chunk of their health bar for essentially free. One will usually leave when you finish the turf war, so I personally like covering my escape with a flash pod as I chase after the monster I actually want. And from there, it's not really that hard to capture him. So, we head back to Estera and... well, someone's been having fun. We need to beat 2 more monsters before we're able to get to it. And this next one, I actually have heard about, but that's about it. So, let's see how I fare. Oh, he straight up gets introduced as he eats another monster, and the worst part is that it's not inaccurate to how he fights. He just charges at you with reckless abandon trying to eat you, sometimes even looping the charge like 3 times before doing an attack. He will knock you down and do its best to corner you. His attacks are so wide that there is little that you can do to get away from it. Even if you do, he is extremely fast at closing the gap. You only really need to see how he moves to get an idea on how this fight goes. While Otogoron fights like a careful hunter, bleeding you out until you just fall over, Tigrex is the exact opposite. It will just throw everything at the wall at you until you just can't hold up and crumble. Which is funny because they actually hate each other. Here they are fighting. Honestly, the Otogoron saved me for a few deaths here and there. But even with that help, the Tigrex is unrelenting. I literally fought him all the way down to the lower levels of the Rotten Vale, striking at everything I had. I had to rely on the little Vita Lilies that grow there, and I just had no idea when it would begin getting tired. Oops. So apparently it was tired, I just hadn't noticed. Oh well, the Last of the Four is one I actually had heard about before as well, mainly about how tough it was. But again, outside of the name I didn't really recognize it, nor do I know what it does. So, let's see what it is. Oh man. So, the Brachydios is another explosive enemy, just that instead of making you explode instantly, he leaves all this goop on the ground, which if you touch, you will eventually explode. Which wouldn't be that bad if it wasn't for the fact that he left it absolutely everywhere. And on top of that, he can actually put it on you directly, by beating the shit out of you. If the other monsters didn't try the lesson that you need to take your pock shots very carefully, this one will, because approaching him is going to be so difficult. Especially once he has begun setting up and the entire arena is painted in green and orange goop. Something that I could have done to alleviate this a ton is to use a fireproof mantle, but at the time I genuinely didn't know that's what the monster was going to be like. I will say at first I was playing a lot more careful, but a little bit after I definitely had to throw all that out because it took so long to actually get him down. And I think it was because I didn't get to take so many shots at it because of how many jumps and explosives he litters all over the place. And he also receives another help from one of the Elder Recess monsters. This time our boy, the Asu Restless. But yeah, after a lot of attacking, dodging, and exploding, we were able to finally take it down. Having finished all of them, we get to take on the final challenge. Velkhana, the Iceborne dragon. Roll credit! Thankfully, this happens to one of the best areas to fight a monster in the Elder's Recess. It has environmental traps like the falling boulders you can drop on them, as well as Vita Lilies that help you save on potions for later. I was surprised in how simple this monster was, mainly using its tail to attack you, which while quick and hard to dodge, doesn't deal that much damage compared to the other monsters we fought. And its Ice Beam, which it will begin by aiming downwards and then just sweeping up, making it a little bit easier to dodge, but messing up the timing if you're a little bit farther away. On top of being pretty nimble, I can see why this could be a little bit difficult, but it's not really that hard. It felt like it was trying to poke at us to keep us at range only to clean us up with its beam. But the fact that it only had one of them seemed a little bit off to me. Eludunastra and Behemoth had repel phases too, but they felt a lot tougher than this. That is, until a little bit further into the fight it starts using its abilities one after another, a lot quicker.
Miss!
Like, yeah, it did actually cart me, but I don't know, it just felt off, you know? And I learned why when I actually finished the repel mission.
I am there.
Just kidding!
So yeah, that wasn't even its final form, meaning that probably everything we saw was just the mild version of whatever the actual Elder Dragon boss fight is. I was not expecting a Frieza style move, I will say that. So I'm actually excited to get to fight this thing in its full power. But to do that, we'll actually need to get to it first. But that's something we'll get to next time. I hope you enjoyed the video. I know for sure that a lot of these monsters have a massive reputation, so I had a lot of fun actually getting to fight them, as well as actually getting to use some of the tips that you guys gave. No, really, you guys have been lifesavers in teaching me some stuff of the game I didn't notice. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Hope you enjoyed the video. The community projects like the Discord are beginning to go, so it should be ready by next week. Again, all your support means the world to me. It really motivates me to know and seeing all the support you guys are giving these videos. So yeah, thank you. And I'll see you next time. Bye, take care.